After returning from rebirth, the first thing I did was swallow a piece of stone. Not only that, I forced the girl who loved me more than anything to swallow her pet bamboo viper alive, right in front of everyone. Everyone thought I'd gone mad, but they didn't know that in less than a minute, the entire world was about to change. All living creatures on Earth would undergo terrifying transformations, and every human would gain supernatural powers based on whatever they had eaten right before the change. In my previous life, I'd eaten a mutton bun at that moment. As a result, I got the power to grow wool. At first, it was somewhat useful for keeping out the cold, but as the demons grew more powerful, this ability proved completely useless. I became so weak that anyone could kill me with ease, but this time, I had returned fully prepared. In my previous life, I had seen an ordinary local dog. It later acquired a divine power similar to Pangu's. I later learned it had accidentally swallowed a mysterious jade stone. That was why it became so powerful. That's why, after my rebirth, I went straight to the antique shop in the southern part of the city. After great difficulty gathering the money, I bought that very jade stone. As for forcing Xiaowan to swallow her pet snake alive, that was because that girl had loved me truly since our previous life. When the apocalypse came, she never abandoned me. She possessed a powerful ice ability that could have let her survive comfortably on her own, but she never left me, even though I only had a useless power. In the end, she lost her life because of me. This time, I wanted to make her far more powerful than before. In my previous life, this very pet snake had transformed into a lesser dragon after the change. If it hadn't been defeated by an even more powerful dog, there was every possibility it could have evolved into a 5-clawed divine dragon in the future. That's why I told her to swallow the snake alive. Based on experience from the previous life, humans had concluded that swallowing something alive awakened the most powerful abilities. It was impossible to split the divine jade stone I possessed into 2 pieces. Otherwise, I would have shared it with Xiaowan. Still, the dragon's power was many times greater than the ice ability she had in her previous life. Seeing my insistence, deep confusion was clearly visible on Xiaowan's face. On one side was the boy she had loved boundlessly for years, and on the other was her beloved pet snake. She remained silent for a few moments. Then she took a deep breath and softly said, "Forgive me, Zhaoqing, but for him, I can do anything." Saying this, she picked up her pet snake. In front of the entire class, she closed her eyes and swallowed it alive just like a noodle. The whole class was stunned. Not a single word came out of anyone's mouth. Everyone stared at her in disbelief. A few seconds later, Xiaowan ran to the water cooler and drank several glasses of water. Then, leaning against the wall, she began retching. Only then did the entire class realize this was no joke. "Did you really swallow it? Have you two gone mad? And you actually ate a snake?" I must still be dreaming. Even the teacher was completely dumbstruck. She couldn't understand what had gotten into the youth of today. I slowly reached Xiaowan. Her face had turned completely pale. Beads of sweat glistened on her forehead from the pain, and some strands of hair were stuck to her face. She looked extremely weak and helpless. My stomach was also in unbearable pain from the jade stone, but still, I held her in my arms. In a weak voice, she said, I did it." I stroked her head and pulled her tightly against my chest. At that very moment, blood began trickling from the corners of her lips. Seeing this, the teacher panicked and immediately called for an ambulance. But just then, the strongest boy in class, Gao Junhao, who had always liked Xiaowan and had confessed his love to her many times, went mad with rage. His eyes had turned red. He strode toward me and roared, "Chen Jie, you deserve to die. You knew she loved you, yet you forced her to swallow a live snake." His roar made the entire class tremble, but I didn't even look his way. I just kept holding Xiaowan. At the same time, I took out my phone and began watching the time on the screen. Gao Junhao was pushing through the crowd, running toward me in anger. I quietly began counting down. 3. He was now right about to reach me. The entire class held its breath. 2. Just one more step. In a completely calm voice, I spoke the final count. 1. The moment the clock struck exactly 10 o'clock, suddenly a blinding light burst outside the window, so intense that no one could keep their eyes open. The entire sky turned white with brilliance for a few moments. Then that light disappeared just as quickly. At the same moment, darkness fell before Gao Junhao's eyes. The intense flash had disrupted his balance, and he fell hard to the ground. But this was only the beginning. A few seconds after that mysterious light, an invisible electromagnetic storm spread throughout the entire solar system. All the students in class panicked and looked toward the window, but outside, they saw nothing unusual. Most people dismissed it as a strange incident and ignored it. However, some students took out their phones to check the news online, but none of the phones had any network. At that same moment, Gao Junhao got up again. There was even more anger in his eyes than before. He ran toward me shouting, "I won't let you go today. I will avenge Wanro." His nearly 6'3" powerful body lunged straight at me. All the other students thought I wouldn't be able to escape this time. But then the entire sky suddenly began to change. Within moments, the daylight vanished and deep darkness enveloped everything. After that, a blood-red light began raining down from the sky. The solar storm had completely disrupted Earth's magnetic field, and because of that, the color of the sky had changed as well. At that very moment, Xiao Wanro, in my arms, let out a heart-stopping scream. Everyone panicked and looked toward her. The next moment, her body began to change. 2 silver, gleaming dragon horns sprouted from her head. Faint sparks of lightning danced around them. On her cheeks, white, glistening dragon scales emerged like ice. On her back, a small blue dragon figure began to appear, surrounded by mysterious energy. A faint silver divine aura spread across her entire body. Behind her, a long dragon tail swayed slowly. At that moment, she no longer looked like an ordinary girl, but rather like a divine dragon goddess. As the transformation completed, countless new pieces of information flooded into her mind. Now she was beginning to understand why I had insisted she swallow the snake. Everything I had done was only for her protection and her future. Now there was even more trust and love in Xiao Wanro's eyes for me. She was convinced that everything I had done was for her well-being. Meanwhile, Gao Junhao ran toward me throwing a punch with all his strength. But this time, Xiao Wanro appeared before me in an instant. She merely extended one hand and easily stopped his heavy punch. With a thud, the fist collided with her palm, but she wasn't hurt in the slightest. Instead, the divine lightning on her palm suddenly erupted. Terrifying electricity coursed through Gao Junhao's entire arm. He screamed in pain. His entire right hand was badly burned. The skin had turned black, and smoke began rising from it. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain, clutching his hand and running about. A few moments later, the dragon scales on Xiao Wanro's face slowly disappeared. The horns on her head and her tail also retracted back into her body, and she began to look like a normal human again. She smiled and looked toward me, as if wanting to hear my praise. But the moment she looked at me, her expression suddenly changed. She felt an awe-inspiring and divine aura emanating from my body that shook her to her very core. This wasn't the fear of an enemy. It was like a small creature standing before a deity. Her very soul trembled. Then she realized that the jade stone I had swallowed was no ordinary thing. Its power was far more terrifying than even her dragon blood. But despite this, what arose in her heart wasn't fear, but an even deeper love for me. She couldn't understand how I knew everything about the future beforehand. Still, she had complete faith that I would never harm her. At this same time, the red light outside grew even more intense. All the darkness turned into a blood-like red glow. Suddenly, Gao Junhao's screaming stopped completely. After that, pain-filled screams of several students echoed throughout the classroom at once. Everyone panicked and looked around. The next moment, a terrifying demon fish-like figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the classroom. Its entire body was covered in blood and flesh, while sharp bones protruded outward. Beneath that giant demon, the crushed, blood-soaked bodies of 2 students lay on the floor. All the other students sat down on the ground in terror. The terrifying sounds of the demon chewing human flesh came from its mouth. But it wasn't alone. One by one, more terrifying demons began appearing inside the classroom. Some were thin and monkey-like. Some were twisted like insects, others as fast as wolves. But there was one thing common among them all. Their bodies showed exposed blood and flesh where skin should have been. Their forms were so horrifying that they seemed to have come straight from hell. And then, without any warning, they attacked the students. The next moment, the entire classroom turned into hell. Those deformed demons ran after the students like madmen. Whoever fell into their hands was mercilessly torn into 2 pieces. Screams, blood, and death raged everywhere. Just a few seconds ago, this classroom had been a place of study. Now it looked like a slaughterhouse. The class monitor, Zhang Ya, was stunned seeing all this. He couldn't understand how the world had changed so horrifically within minutes. But I knew everything. That mysterious red light and the electromagnetic storm that followed were the real causes of this disaster. Those whose mental strength was weak succumbed to that strange power and directly turned into demons. Those whose minds were strong began gaining special powers based on whatever object they had last swallowed. At that same time, Gao Junhao also fell victim to the transformation. The veins in his body began bursting. Countless red blood threads emerged from beneath his skin and wrapped tightly around his entire body. Within seconds, his massive body began shrinking. His bones bent in strange ways. His back split open and enormous wings emerged from it. His feet were replaced by sharp talons. His face also changed completely. He was no longer human. He had become a terrifying blood moon demon bird. As the transformation completed, he let out an ear-splitting screech and lunged at lightning speed toward a girl standing before him. His sharp talons split the girl's body into two halves in one strike. Seeing this, the remaining students retreated in fear. I carefully observed that demonic bird. My eyes narrowed. Blood moon demon bird. I recognized it immediately. In my previous life, this had been one of the most dangerous demons in the early stages. Its speed was so fast that most awakened people were killed before they could even use their powers. If someone faced it for the first time, their chances of survival were virtually zero. On top of that, it was deep darkness all around now, and this demon grew even more powerful at night. In my previous life, I hadn't come to school that day. That's why I never encountered this demon, and unknowingly my life was saved. Now I understood why most students at our school hadn't survived back then. I took a deep breath. There was no point in running now. This time, I had to truly test my new power. I immediately tried to awaken my new ability. The next moment, complete information about my divine capability surfaced in my mind. A faint smile appeared on my lips. Blood moon demon bird, very well. You'll be the first to taste my power. I took a step forward. Suddenly, golden light burst from my entire body. A divine mask of black and gold appeared on my face. Golden locks behind my head waved like flames. A black and gold divine armor formed over my entire body, with a texture like dragon scales. Within moments, my body began to look far more massive and powerful. Behind my back, a purple divine aura began to swirl, as if an ancient deity had descended upon the earth itself. Seeing me in that form, Xiao Wanrou's eyes filled with wonder and admiration. She stared at me without blinking. Meanwhile, the other demons had also sensed my power. One by one, they all lunged toward me. First, that giant fish demon ran toward me. Its nearly 4-meter-tall body shook the ground as it advanced toward me, but the moment its eyes fell on me, it froze for an instant, as if the remaining human memories inside it had been terrified by my divine aura. But the next moment, it roared and attacked me with full force. Xiao Wanrou also stepped forward to help me, but I raised my hand and stopped her. This battle, I'll fight alone. Saying this, I too ran straight toward that giant demon without any fear. The next moment, with a thunderous crash, the entire classroom shook from our collision. The ground cracked and clouds of dust enveloped everything. Although my body had grown to nearly 2 meters tall, I still looked small compared to that 4-meter-tall fish demon. After the collision, my foot slipped slightly on the broken ground. It felt like I was somewhat lacking in raw strength. But just then, the blood moon demon bird seized the opportunity to dive at me from above. It thought I was busy stopping the giant demon. That was its biggest mistake. I suddenly pulled my foot back. Instead of blocking the attack, I grabbed the giant fish demon's body and swung it with all my might. Its massive body crashed directly into the diving blood moon demon bird. With a thunderous impact, the fish demon was embedded into the wall. Meanwhile, the blood moon demon bird had managed to save itself at the last moment by spreading its wings. But now, for the first time, clear fear was visible on its face. The blood moon demon bird hovered in the air. Its red eyes kept glaring at me constantly. It had realized that defeating me alone wouldn't be easy. Suddenly, it let out an extremely sharp and strange screech. It wasn't just screaming in anger. It was using its bloodline power to command the other partially transformed demons present throughout the classroom. The next moment, the eyes of all the demons turned red, the flesh on their bodies began splitting even more, and they began to look far more terrifying than before. They abandoned the human corpses before them and lunged toward me all at once. Meanwhile, the blood moon demon bird quietly flew near the ceiling, waiting for the right moment. Without panicking, I extended my right hand. Suddenly, the primordial divine aura swirling behind my back condensed into a massive black and golden battle axe. It was Pangu's divine Kaichian axe. I gripped the axe tightly and stomped my foot on the ground with full force. With a thunderous crash, a deep crack formed in the floor. I ran toward the demons like a hurricane. Leaping into the air, I spun my body and swung the axe with full power. A bright golden blade shot out like lightning, tearing through the air. The next moment, all 4 demons were simultaneously cut in two from the middle. As their bodies fell to the ground, the entire classroom filled with blood. Seeing this, the blood moon demon bird hiding on the ceiling went mad with rage and lunged toward me. It knew that if it didn't fight now, its death was certain. But I had been waiting for exactly that moment. A faint smile appeared on my lips. I raised the Kaichian axe with both hands. Divine energy began gathering around it. Then I struck upward with all my might. A massive golden blade reached toward the sky. The Blood Moon demon bird couldn't even escape that strike. In one blow, its body was split in two at the waist. Its blood scattered in the air and both halves fell heavily to the ground. As the most dangerous demon died, the entire classroom suddenly fell silent. The remaining demons began looking at me in fear. They could clearly feel the divine aura of Pangu emanating from my body, but I didn't give them even a moment's chance. I advanced at lightning speed and finished off all the remaining demons as well. Within just 3 minutes, the entire classroom was cleared of demons. Now only the surviving students. Blood splattered everywhere, and demon corpses remained. When the last demon died, the students remaining in the classroom breathed a sigh of relief. But the relief didn't last long. Some students immediately began shouting, "We need to get out of here. Let's go outside quickly. Staying here is like inviting death." Hearing their words, I slowly climbed onto the teacher's desk. My voice echoed throughout the classroom. "Everyone, quiet." The moment they heard me, the entire room fell completely silent. All eyes were on me. I said in a grave voice, "The world has changed. Outside is no longer a world for humans. There are demons everywhere. If you want to stay alive, you'll have to obey my every word." Before I could even finish speaking, suddenly a heavy growling sound came from outside the classroom. Everyone panicked and looked toward the door. Outside the door stood a giant hellish demon dog. Its eyes were blood red. Saliva dripped from its mouth, and large, sharp teeth were clearly visible. It was growling slowly, but its voice was enough to shake the entire classroom. At that same moment, a girl standing in the crowd screamed loudly in fear. Hearing her scream, the demon dog became completely aggressive. I immediately recognized it. In my previous life, this very demon dog had continuously hunted humans and demons in the school. Later, it evolved into a 3-headed hellhound and became the terror of the entire city. If powerful awakened people hadn't arrived in time at that point, the entire city would have become its prey. This time, instead of attacking it myself, I gestured toward Xiao Wanro. Understanding my signal, she extended her hand. Blue divine lightning began gathering in her palm. Then a green divine sword manifested in her hand. The next moment, with a crackling sound, a terrifying divine lightning bolt struck straight at the demon dog. The lightning scorched part of its body black, and the smell of burning spread throughout the corridor. But it didn't die. Instead, it became even more enraged. It let out a powerful roar and opened its mouth, releasing black smoke like poisonous breath. Wherever that smoke reached, the desks and chairs turned to ash in an instant. 2 students standing before it died on the spot. Seeing this, my eyes narrowed. So, even divine lightning couldn't harm it. Now I had to enter the battlefield myself. I didn't waste a single moment. As I extended my hand, my Kaishin divine axe manifested again. It tore through the air and fell straight toward the hellish demon dog. At the same time, I too ran toward it at full speed. The demon dog was extremely agile. It twisted its body with a jerk and dodged the first strike of the axe. But I had already reached right in front of it. I rammed it with the full force of my body. With a thunderous crash, the massive demon dog tumbled several meters away and rolled on the ground. Xiao Wanro immediately extended her divine sword toward me. Without wasting time, I grabbed the sword and lunged at the demon dog as it tried to get up. This time, I gave it no chance. With one strike, I severed its neck. Its massive head fell to the ground, and its body convulsed before going still. I went to its corpse and cut open its belly, extracting a hard, shining energy crystal from inside. In my previous life, all awakened people called these crystals Ling Jing, spiritual essence. Whoever absorbed them would have their power rapidly increase. Although not every demon's body contained one, only some powerful or special demons left behind such crystals after death, and the better the crystal, the more powerful that demon had been. I looked at the crystal for a few moments. Then without any hesitation, I extended it toward Xiao Wanro. In her previous life, she had even risked her life for me. In this life, I wanted her to become even more powerful than me. I softly said, "Place it between your eyebrows and let its power merge into you with your mind." Xiao Wanru obeyed me without asking any questions. She placed the crystal on her forehead and closed her eyes. Within seconds, white light spread throughout the crystal. Then it slowly disappeared. At the same time, a far more powerful divine aura began emanating from Xiao Wanro's body. Her strength had once again multiplied several times over. Now she had become a second rank awakened. The apocalypse had just begun in the world. At such a time, being a second rank awakened was enough to face most dangers. I breathed a sigh of satisfaction. Now at least her chances of survival were many times greater than in the previous life. After Xiao Wanro's power increased, I slowly looked toward her and gave a faint smile. But the next moment, my face turned serious again. my gaze fixed on that girl who had screamed in fear a while ago, which was exactly why the hellish demon dog had been attracted toward us. Without saying anything, I reached her. Before she could even understand, in an instant my sword passed through her neck in one strike. Her head rolled to the ground. A deathly silence fell over the entire classroom. The remaining students trembled with fear. They couldn't understand why I had done this. I said in a cold voice, "In this apocalypse, even a small mistake by one person can cause the death of dozens. If anyone endangers everyone's lives with their foolishness, I won't let them live." After hearing my words, no one dared to speak. At that same time, pain-filled screams began coming from outside. Along with them, the terrifying growls of many demons also echoed. I understood that the demons throughout the entire school were now gathering in groups. In my previous life as well, there had been a large number of students inside the school. Because of this, many people had turned into demons, and a massive demon army had formed throughout the school. Even though in this life I was far more powerful than before, facing thousands of demons at once was still impossible. I immediately ordered, "Everyone, quickly close the doors and windows. Block them completely with desks and chairs." Some students hesitated at first, but hearing the screams from outside, everyone understood that this was the only way. They immediately began following my orders. Everyone worked together to drag heavy desks, chairs, and cabinets in front of the doors and windows. The entire classroom had now turned into a temporary fortress. But as the sounds of demons outside drew closer, the heartbeats of all the students inside grew faster and faster. No one knew whether this closed door would save them or become their grave within minutes. Everyone was holding their breath, staring at the door. Just then, Xiao Qianqian, standing in the crowd, suddenly recognized a girl running outside. It was her roommate and best friend, Xiao Wei. At this moment, Xiao Wei's entire body was soaked in blood. There wasn't a single spot on her body without a wound. She was running with all her might to save her life, while several demons were chasing behind her. Seeing this scene, Xiao Qianqian's heart melted. She ran to the door and began opening it. At that same moment, I grabbed her hand tightly. I said in a cold voice, "Do you want all of us here to die because of one mistake of yours?" Xiao Qianqian looked at me angrily. "She's my best friend. Am I supposed to leave her to die? How can you be so heartless?" I looked into her eyes and said in a calm voice, "If you feel so sorry for her, then go. Go save her yourself." Saying this, I activated my divine armor. Then I opened the door and pushed Xiao Qianqian outside in one shove. The next moment, I closed the door again. The moment she got outside, Xiao Qianqian's face turned pale with fear. She began pounding on the door like a madwoman. "Chen Jie, please, I made a mistake. Let me inside. I'll never do this again." But I didn't respond to a single word she said. A few seconds later, the demons roaming the corridor heard her voice. Their red eyes turned toward her. The next moment, they all lunged at her. Her painful screams began echoing through the corridor. The students sitting inside the classroom trembled. No one had the courage to speak. Everyone sat quietly with their heads bowed. I stood behind the door, carefully listening to every sound outside. If any demon broke through the door, I was ready to fight to my last breath. And if things got completely out of control, even if it cost my life, I would get Xiao Wanro out of this school alive. After some time, the screams coming from outside suddenly stopped. The entire corridor fell completely silent. The students sitting in the classroom began looking at each other. Someone said in a low voice, "Have all the demons left?" But I didn't feel that way at all. I slowly went to the door and peeked through a small glass window. The sight I saw forced even me to think for a few moments. Xiao Qianqian's body had been completely torn apart and eaten. Only a large bloodstain remained on the floor. But even stranger than that was the fact that all the demons in the corridor were crouching on the ground, trembling. It seemed as if they were terrified of some extremely dangerous existence. This was completely abnormal. If everything had been as before, they would have broken down the door and come inside by now. In my previous life, I hadn't been present in the school at that time. That's why I didn't know what was going to happen next either. For the first time, a slight unease arose in my mind. At that same moment, Xiao Wanro came to my side and said in a low voice, "Chen Jie, what's happening outside?" She was gripping her sword tightly. If there was even the slightest danger, she would be the first to step forward to protect me. I shook my head. It's hard to say anything right now. Everyone, don't move from your places. Let's first see what's outside. Before I could even finish speaking, a thud sound of someone walking slowly began echoing through the corridor. With every step, it felt as if someone had struck a hammer on everyone's heart. Then a girl's slow but extremely strange voice was heard. "Classmates, come outside. I've been waiting for you for so long. I have so many delicious things. Let's all eat together." Hearing that voice, the faces of several students in class turned white. Someone said in a trembling voice, That's Zhao Xiaolu's voice. But she had taken leave today. Another student said in panic, How did she get here? Some girls who used to live with her in the hostel began looking at each other. Guilt was clearly visible on their faces along with fear. It seemed as if they had done something very bad to Zhao Xiaolu in the past. At that same moment, with a thunderous crash, the classroom door shook violently, then another terrifying impact, and then a third. Now it was clear that whatever was outside the door was using all its strength to get inside. I immediately gripped my Pangu divine axe tightly. My eyes were fixed on the door. Whether it was Zhao Xiaolu or some other demon outside, if it attacked me or Xiao Wanro, I would separate its head from its body without a moment's thought. At that same time, Gao Xiaoli, crouching in the corner of the class, said trembling, Open the door, please. But from outside, that terrifying laughter was heard again. My dear friends, you all used to love playing with me so much. Why won't you open the door now? There was a strange madness and insanity in her voice. The next moment, with a thunderous crash, the classroom door was blown apart in one strike. The figure that appeared at the door made all the students scream. She was no longer human. Zhao Xiaolu had transformed into a giant spider-like demon. She had 8 long legs. Her entire body had grown several times larger. She alone occupied half the classroom. Gao Xiaoli fell to her knees before her in fear. Crying, she said, Xiaolu, forgive me. What I did was wrong. But there was only hatred in Zhao Xiaolu's eyes. She laughed like a madwoman. Forgive you? When you all used to torment me every single day, did you ever think a day like this would come? Years of pain and vengeance were clearly reflected in her voice. At that same time, one of her former roommates slowly began running toward the door, but Zhao Xiaolu's eyes had already fallen on her. She lightly moved her hand. With a crash, the door closed by itself. Seeing this, my eyes narrowed. I thought to myself, this isn't just spider power. She also has telekinesis, mental power. It seems she has already reached the peak limit of the first rank. The next moment, Zhao Xiaolu moved at lightning speed and appeared before the running girl. Her sharp talons flashed in the air. In one strike, the girl's body was split into 2 halves. Zhao Xiaolu picked up half of her body and began eating it in front of everyone. The entire classroom echoed with screams. Several students vomited right there. No one could move their feet from fear. The whole class drowned in terror seeing this horrifying sight. But then, Gao Xiaoli somehow gathered courage from somewhere. She picked up a broken table leg from the ground and attacked Zhao Xiaolu with all her might. With a thud, the wooden stick struck her leg, but it felt as if she had struck iron. The stick broke and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Zhao Xiaolu wasn't even slightly hurt. She slowly turned and looked at Gao Xiaoli with a terrifying smile. The next moment she used her mental power. Gao Xiaoli's body suddenly lifted into the air. She kept trying to break free with all her strength, but her body seemed gripped by an invisible hand. Xiao Xiaolu laughed and said, What's the hurry? Now it's your turn. She slowly brought Gao Xiaoli toward her mouth. Then in one bite, she tore off a large piece of her shoulder. Her painful scream echoed throughout the classroom. Within seconds, half of Gao Xiaoli's body was soaked in blood. Even after taking her revenge, Zhao Xiaolu didn't stop. Her gaze slowly turned toward me and Xiao Wanro. She licked the blood from her lips with her long tongue and said with a smile, You two look the most delicious of all. I immediately gripped the Keishan axe tightly in my hand. If she attacked us, I would finish her right here without hesitation. But Zhao Xiaolu didn't heed my warning. Long, sharp talons emerged from her fingers. The next moment, she lunged at me, tearing through the air. I let out a mighty roar and swung my Keishan axe with full force. With a thunderous clash, sparks flew everywhere from the collision between my axe and her talons. The terrifying impact sent Zhao Xiaolu falling back several steps. She looked at her wounded talons. For the first time, clear surprise was visible in her eyes. She couldn't believe that a human could match her strength. And then, instead of anger, madness overtook her face. She looked toward the sky and screamed, Whoever hurts me, I will never let them live. Zhao Xiaolu's eyes were now completely filled with insanity. Suddenly, she opened her massive mouth wide. A black depth was visible inside her throat. The next moment, thick white spiderwebs began shooting out of her mouth at high speed. Each web was coated with green, sticky, poisonous and corrosive fluid. Within seconds, those webs had covered the entire classroom. A giant web had spread everywhere. In such a small space, it was nearly impossible to escape it, but I didn't panic at all. This was the perfect opportunity to test the true power of my new awakened ability. I took a deep breath. Golden aura began emanating from my body. That divine energy slowly merged into my Keishan axe. I raised the axe with both hands. At that very moment, the entire building shook violently. The floor began to shake. Cracks appeared in the walls. The glass in the windows all around shattered one by one. Just as the giant spiderweb was about to ensnare me, I swung my axe downward with full force. With a thunderous crash, the divine power from that strike split the entire web in two from the middle. Even such thick and strong webs couldn't withstand that blow. They broke apart and scattered in an instant. But the attack didn't stop there. That same power from the axe reached Zhao Xiaolu's body directly. The next moment, her body was split in two from shoulder to waist. Blood sprayed everywhere. Zhao Xiaolu screamed in pain. For the first time, she realized that if she stayed here, her death was certain. Before dying, she released all her remaining mental power with full force. An invisible mental wave spread throughout the entire classroom. Ordinary students immediately fell to the ground, clutching their heads. They began writhing in sharp pain. I too was affected by that mental attack for a moment. After all, this was the first time I was facing an enemy with mental powers. At that same time, the mental wave released by Zhao Xiaolu reached all the demons present outside. The next moment, dozens of demons came running growling from the corridor toward the classroom. There was only one target in their eyes: kill me. The moment the demons from outside lunged at me, Xiao Wanrou's eyes turned cold. She immediately stood before me. She said in a firm voice, "I won't let anyone harm Xiao Chen." The next moment, she gripped the Qingling sword tightly in her hand. Lightning began flashing on the sword. Then she activated her divine power. Poisonous divine thunder. One after another, massive lightning bolts struck toward the demons like snakes. The sound of thunder echoed everywhere. Where the lightning struck, several demons were instantly burned to ash. But Xiao Wanrou didn't stop there. She reached among them at lightning speed. Her sword was taking a new life with every strike. Before her, even those terrifying demons were being cut like vegetables. Within moments, the entire corridor was filled with demon corpses. Now not a single living demon remained there. Meanwhile, the severely wounded Zhao Xiaolu had somehow stolen her last strength. She lunged toward me again. At that same moment, two streams of mysterious black and yellow divine light emerged from my body. This was my second innate power. That power destroyed Zhao Xiaolu's mental control in an instant. My consciousness returned completely, and in fact became even clearer and more powerful than before. Zhao Xiaolu looked at me in disbelief. She couldn't believe that her mental power had been almost completely ineffective against me. I smiled faintly. Without saying anything, I concentrated all my power into the Kaitian axe. The next moment, I lunged at her like lightning. A golden flash waved in the air. The remaining half of Zhao Xiaolu's already split body was completely pulverized in that same strike. Her body transformed into countless pieces of flesh and a rain of blood. The entire classroom fell silent once again. The students who were still alive all stared at me and Xiao Wanrou in stunned silence. They now understood that if they wanted to survive in this apocalypse, they would have to stay with us. Where Zhao Xiaolu died, a white shining crystal appeared where her body had fallen. Seeing it, I immediately understood this was a low-level spirit crystal, Lingjing. Such crystals were extremely precious for increasing an awakened person's power. At that same time, two black smoke-like shadows began emerging in the air. They were the deep hatred and vengeful feelings born from Zhao Xiaolu's death. A shrieking voice echoed throughout the room. "I hate you all! You all go to hell!" Saying this, both black shadows exited through the window and slowly dissolved into the air. I retracted my Kaitian axe and let out a light breath. Just then, Xiao Wanrou ran to me in panic. She gripped my hand tightly and said worriedly, "Xiao Chen, are you hurt anywhere?" She carefully examined my entire body. A while ago, when I had been trapped in mental control, her heart had risen to her throat. I smiled and stroked her head affectionately, saying, "Don't worry, I'm perfectly fine." Even today, just like in her previous life, she was my greatest concern. I comforted her, and then picked up the white crystal from the ground. A faint red glow was visible inside the crystal. I gripped it tightly in my palm, then I began absorbing its energy with my mind. Within moments, the white light of the crystal began merging into my body. Every cell in my body seemed filled with new energy. An immense power began surging within me. My aura became far more powerful than before. Just one low-level spirit crystal had directly pushed my power to the peak of the second order. Second order peak awakened. Because of my Hundun Shunong body innate talent, I could obtain far more power from spirit crystals compared to ordinary awakened people. Where others would barely reach the beginning of the second rank with one crystal, I had directly reached the peak of the second rank. Looking at the scattered blood and demon corpses all around, Xiao Wanrou fell silent for a few moments. Then she softly held my hand and asked, "What will we do now?" There was less fear in her voice, but worry for the future was certainly there. I said in a grave voice, "This is only the beginning. From now on, the world has completely changed. The more powerful awakened people become, the more they will be targeted by demons. And as time passes, these demons will keep evolving by consuming humans and each other. If we want to survive, we too must continuously increase our strength." Hearing my words, Xiao Wanro lightly nodded her head. She didn't know much about ways to increase power, but she knew one thing very well. As long as she was alive, she would give her life to protect me. Meanwhile, the sharp smell of blood spreading from Zhao Xiaolu's corpse had now spread throughout the entire school. The flesh of a high-level demon was extremely attractive food for other demons as well. Within a short while, numerous demons from different parts of the school began coming in that direction. I immediately grabbed Xiao Wanro's hand. "We need to get out of here now." Just then, the rich kid of the class, Huang Yan, panicked and came before me. He spoke quickly. "Chen Jie, take me with you too. My father is the director of Guangyao Group. I'll give you however much money you want." Hearing his words, I let out a light laugh. Then looking into his eyes, I said, "This is now the time of apocalypse. Do you really think money still has any value?" Huang Yan was about to say something when I looked at him with cold eyes. The moment my gaze fell on him, his face turned pale with fear. The next moment, I gave him a light push on the shoulder. But even that light push contained my current power. He fell to the ground and never got up again. The other students in the class retreated in terror seeing this scene. Now they clearly understood. In this new world, their lives were worth no more than an ant before me. After finishing off Huang Yan, I left the classroom with Xiao Wanro. The remaining students standing behind us panicked and looked at each other. Someone said, "If Chen Jie leaves, how will we survive?" Another immediately said, "We have to follow him. Only he can keep us alive." After some discussion, they picked up broken table legs and broomsticks from the classroom. Then they all carefully began following behind us. I was aware of them following behind, but I didn't stop them. After all, they were my old classmates. As long as they didn't become a burden to me, I could let them come along. Besides, the presence of so many people would attract more demons toward us. And for me, more demons meant more battles, and more opportunities to rapidly increase my strength. After eliminating some demons along the way, we reached the school convenience store. Without wasting time, I began filling my bag with all the essential food and drink items inside. The other students also wanted to gather supplies, but no one had the courage to touch the items I had chosen. They were only picking up the things I was leaving behind. After filling 2 large bags completely, I came outside. At that same time, the school's former sports representative, Lin Shu, quickly came to me. He smiled and said, "Brother Chen, I'm physically strong. Let me carry these bags. You and sister-in-law walk comfortably." He was looking at me very respectfully. I looked at him for a few moments. Then I handed both bags to him. But in my mind, I had also made a decision. If he showed even the slightest dishonesty, I would finish him off right then without hesitation. As soon as we stepped out of the convenience store, suddenly a large group of people came and blocked our path. I looked carefully. Their leader was Zhao Hu, the monitor of Class 6. In school, he was already known as a notorious thug. He looked at me arrogantly and said, "If you want to save your life, quietly leave all the supplies here." One of the boys standing behind him also said arrogantly, "Our boss has now awakened. Standing before him is beyond your ability." I immediately understood. After the apocalypse began, Zhao Hu had also awakened his special power. Relying on that strength, he had gathered the remaining students of his class. Meanwhile, Lin Shu, carrying both heavy bags, began looking toward me. Without my order, he didn't have the courage to give the supplies to anyone. I looked toward Zhao Hu and said in a calm voice, "I gathered all these things by risking my life. Why should I give them to you?" Hearing my words, Zhao Hu's face turned red with anger. The next moment he clenched his fists. Then suddenly 2 massive wings emerged from his back. Those wings had white round spots on them. Seeing them, I immediately understood. Before the apocalypse, he had probably swallowed a 7-spotted ladybug. That's why he had gained this power. Zhao Hu flapped his wings forcefully and lunged at me like a meteor. At the same time, he shouted, "I am now a 2nd-rank awakened warrior. Today, I'll show you my true power." His body became even stronger. His muscles began swelling. His entire body looked as hard as steel. But I didn't move an inch from my spot. I only gripped my Keishin axe tightly. My eyes were fixed directly on him. Waiting for his swift attack, I stood completely calm. Friends, this is where part 1 of this video ends. If you want to see part 2 of this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write part 2 in the comments.